Okay, ready? We'll do a quick 5-second pause.
Should we do that?
Hey, I was trying to do 5 seconds, man. I was counting down. You ruined it. All right, welcome to the Real Alaska Podcast. I'm here with my co-host,
Billy.
And we're here with
Laura Dean.
Laura.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Who are you here with?
I am here with Ameriprise Financial and I suppose various nonprofits that I'm a part of.
I know you're like all over the place.
I know. A little bit ADHD, but it's
Do
all
they
good.
know you're here?
Embrace the power. I mean, I talk about everything, so they just kind of give me the way to go.
Free rein.
Yeah, free rein. They know they can't keep me on track, even with medicine.
Well, do you want to just kind of give a quick synopsis of what you do, not like as the business side of things?
Yeah.
And then we'll just kind of go into kind of like all the other stuff. So.
Yeah, totally cool. Yeah, so I'm so far Alaska's only certified military financial advisor. So basically like a CFP, but for military specific and all those ins and outs. I'm with Ameriprise Financial. Technically I had a team out of Texas, but I work here remotely and can do clients up here in Alaska and everything. And particularly because we have the most veterans per capita. And I'm a veteran myself from the Air Force. I was a former Air Force intel officer before I went financial advisor. And I love it. So I'm excited to be here with you guys talking about all this.
Yeah. I know we've been trying to get you on for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
We also had a small hiatus because we were waiting for the studio to get done.
How dare you?
I know. How dare we? Life. Billy's former active, right? And it's all that jazz. And of course, being former cop and fireman.
Yeah.
It's just like that.
You kind of fit it too.
Yeah. Just those folks tend to kind of just stick together a lot of times. And then, we see a lot of misinformation from
a whole bunch, yeah.
vendors, right? Especially even ones that have veteran in the name of them, who just don't do the greatest job with giving active duty military or veterans
the service.
Good services or just good information, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So
What's a protected? What do we call? Is it not a protected class? What's the word?
The group.
Protected category.
Yeah.
Right. But it seems like some of I would argue in certain ways it's at risk, right? And so it seems like the businesses that market towards them are predatory in the fact that they kind of.
Yeah. Well, and think about it this way too. Like a lot of those of us that have served went in right after high school. And so all we've known is the military, where for the most part, every interaction we've had with military members have been, they've had integrity.
Right.
And they've done their mission and it's been, for the most part, true information. And so you go to finance and while we could joke about finance in the military being effective or not, it's still, you are taught to trust. And you're taught to believe in the information given to you. Same with going to doctors, that type of thing. And so when you get out into the civilian world and you're not that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
We're not necessarily.
Well, now everything's for profit, right? And before it was
Exactly.
everybody was for duty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you have to relearn how to assess things. And there's no salesmanship in the military. This is your finance guy. This is your doctor.
Right.
You don't have to worry about people trying to get your information. One of the ones that gets me the most angry is we call them disability sharks, claim sharks, who, when you're filing for your VA entitlement, they're like, we can guarantee you get 100%. And then they take a portion of your payment is how they make their money. And that's just asinine.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's, we see it on the real estate side, right?
Yeah.
There's predatory companies that are on the our side as well, right? And so it's and that's why we love to help military because the two of us, it's coming from, not prior service, but I'm it's the same people that that serve as police, fire, that's that mindset is there, right? And that's why you get along so well with military because it's It's like either you're home on domestic side or you're not, right?
Exactly.
So, but we just get tired of seeing it. And Billy and I've had this conversation numerous times. So, but enough about that for the moment. We can go back into it.
Yeah.
But so like, what do you do? Like what? It's like let's say we're just fresh out, right?
Yeah.
Like how would you what would that process look like?
Yeah, well, ideally I'd get to you before you leave the military because there's some key things that we can do before you leave the military that will set you up for hello success down the line. Not just success, hello success,
Hello success, I love it.
Yeah. Money on money, no.
I mean, while they're in service, it's a useful time.
Exactly.
If you can get to them early in their career, right? I imagine they have a better chance of better outcomes.
Yeah.
Greater outcomes, if you will.
Yeah. And dear FINRA, I'm not promising that they'll be successful.
Well, my thing to them is about real estate, which is interesting. Kind of goes together, right? If you look at it like as
an investment,
a team, right? A team of professionals that are helping you from, the beginning of your career, getting in early, maybe some advice, telling you some things that you haven't heard before, right? Setting you up with a trajectory. It's like, hey, every time you switch duty stations, maybe you buy a house, right?
Yeah.
And when you leave, we talk about renting that, and you build a portfolio of real estate. And so at the end of your 25-year career, right?
And how do you, within your first duty location, A, you can get a place, but also B, don't go down to the car lot and get the Charger. That's going to take your entire monthly pay.
No, get the condo.
Yeah, obviously. And, how do you build up your portfolio, that type of thing. And so then we can make a plan. And like every PCS, on average, military.com estimates that you're going to spend about $5,000 out of pocket expenses beyond what the military pays you for your PCS. Yeah. And so that's a lot of money for someone, in the junior ranks. And so how do we budget for that? Right. How do we make sure when you're moving every 3 years 3 to 6 years, that can be a lot of money over time. And so beyond just having, so there's some financial habits there. And then as you get out, you're going to be looking at things like, hey, you're going to be losing healthcare. What does that mean? How do we budget for that? How do you read your benefits that your potential employer is getting? And those are things that I can help out with the military member to understand, and also look at like the spousal impact, spousal and children impact. And then sadly, I have to say it, but divorce rates are really high amongst the military. And what's the impact of a divorce on both sides of it? Yeah. And so, when you're talking like military benefits upon retirement, what does that mean for the divorced spouse if they weren't military, that type of thing? And so it's just really having kind of that like specialized understanding, just like you'd never bulk at going to an estate attorney to draw up your will, that type of thing. I mean, you could go to a one-stop shop, and I'm sure that's fine if you have, but as you get older, things get more complicated, and it's nice to have that relationship already.
And those are some things that are happening behind the scenes in the military that the soldiers don't even realize that they have. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I'm really passionate about Ameriprise Financial. I've been at other firms, and one, they recognized the threat, if you will, to the military, both military and veterans, and that's why they helped work with Dalton Education to create the Certified Military Financial Advisor designation, which is now industry-wide. So it's becoming the new standard. And then furthermore, they've invested a lot of money in developing education for military members. And so, for example, I developed a seminar on financial planning for active duty that we now have approved through Ameriprise, and also we're partnered with it's Army P3, so private public partnerships, I think is what the P3 stands for. P3. Yeah, right.
The acronyms kill.
I know, it's the military, right? AP3, no. And so now we're able to go, because one of the big things that I'm sure you guys have is you can't, when you get on the other side of the fence, when you go in, you're not allowed to market your business, understandably so, because the government can't be seen as supporting one business over the other. Right. And so then it becomes the problem of how do we get to these individuals if they don't know any better? And so with this P3 partnership, it's literally we just come in and teach them. Yeah. And whether they take our services or not, doesn't matter too much. It's more just what Ameriprise wants to do is to help the young airman, young soldier, young Marine, young seaman, sailor. We'll go with sailor. This is a kid show, right? Young sailor to not, have if you have good financial habits early on, you can really set yourself up well beyond, using your BAH to purchase a VA property, and then finding out how to do the BRRRR method, and finding how do you find a real estate agent or a property management company that actually has integrity, that's not going to fleece you.
Yeah.
Right.
And
it's a real threat.
Yeah. Well, and also looking out for your best interests.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, man. We ended up with one the other day, and the lender they had originally gone with to where a local lender was able to help was, I mean, dude, it was substantial. I mean, it was significant. It was significant, and it was, certain lenders, especially on the national scale, are somewhat known, in the background, right? Especially amongst agents to really take advantage of service members.
Yeah.
Right. We have this underlying knowledge, and we're like, dude, you should 100% shop local, and at least with some people that we know, that are going to take way better care of you, right?
Yeah.
And it was like a $3,000-$4,000 difference on just the closing costs, plus almost a point in an interest rate.
Wow.
It was massive.
Yeah, and that's why, having those relationships early on, and as we're building, I have a good connection across the U.S. of people. So no matter where we may start a relationship when you're stationed up here, but I can be your advisor anywhere in the world. And, I can reach out to, say you move to Virginia, I can reach out and I'm like, I have a network of people of like, hey, who's, a good, reputable real estate agent in Virginia. And I have a connection with a bunch of veterans over in that area that I trust to give me those credible sources. And then hopefully the real estate agent has, those loan connections too.
Of course.
But it's pretty cool when you can sit back and think, in my younger years as an LT, I put out a wager, and I'm pretty sure I could have at the time, probably not now, but name a base in the Air Force, and I probably knew someone there because just from the officer training, and knowing a bunch and if you can't tell, an extrovert, so I talk to a lot of people.
Can't tell at all.
Right. And with social media and everything now, you can actually stay in touch with people.
Exactly.
Oh, so much easier now. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty great.
It's a powerful network.
Yeah. So definitely with individuals in the military, I talk about let's utilize that VA ability.
Yeah.
And doing the BRRRR method I mentioned earlier, where you buy, renovate, refi, and then rent it out. And you can free up if it works out, you can free up some more VA entitlement for it.
Yep. Your first VA purchase?
Yeah. It's
no cap.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but say
bananas.
So say you I'm pretty sure I will cede to loan officers on this. I'm looking at the camera. I will cede to loan officers since I'm not one. But I'm pretty sure if you refinance your current mortgage into your current VA mortgage into a conventional loan, it frees up that entitlement.
It does.
All the way up.
Yeah.
So,
whatever's left on that entitlement on the house gets opened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there's a little bit of a process to it. It takes a little bit of time because it is the VA, so it's
fair.
Government. But,
so efficient.
But I think it takes about 30, 45 days typically from refinance to allow that for the VA to report that as the certificate of eligibility opens back up on that entitlement. But yes.
But you're talking to moving somewhere like the DC area, the Metroplex area over there, you're going to need close to all that entitlement.
Not right now.
For a property right now.
It's on fire sale right now.
I know, right?
Their market doubled in the last 3 weeks.
I bet it did, yeah. That makes sense.
That's a different conversation. Different podcast, guys. Different podcast.
We're just throwing nuggets out there for the future. Stay tuned.
DC market. Great purchase opportunity right now.
It's true.
But yeah, it's something I'm very passionate about. And I tell everyone, with this expertise, like if you know a military veteran or family members, it's worth having a conversation with me.
Yeah.
I promise not to sound, because I'm tired. I'm a mother of a wonderful 3-year-old, but I'm a mother of a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
I don't have enough energy to sell you. I know Billy knows, he's in that phase.
Oh, yeah. Fun time.
Yeah.
I don't have the energy to sell people. So but worst case, you need help, and now you know.
Mm-hmm.
And best case, you don't need help, but now you know.
I mean, information's a tool, right?
Yeah.
Like armed with knowledge, right? And that's the knowledge of what you should do, but it's also the knowledge of like, hey, man, this is out there.
Yeah.
People take advantage of you that are, like affiliated with the military. I say that in very loose quotations, right? But dude, like there are legitimate companies have been fined and sued and everything else for taking advantage of military members, right? And it's disgusting.
It is.
So I'm glad that you're here to talk about taking care of the military.
Yeah.
I know that's a passion for you. It's a passion for us. We want to get more involved with it. That's been another goal for our push for this year is to get a lot more further involved in that. Just because I know like I said, we do have a passion about it, and I know we provide a really good service.
Yeah.
And we've got the ethics behind it. So.
And I'm really excited about, I just saw today, to plug you guys, I saw your PCS to Alaska guide that you guys are developing.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that's going to be real huge, because there's so much, like you said earlier, information and misinformation out there.
Yeah, tons of it.
And so what's the shoot? I don't know. I can't do it in the moment. What's the ground truth of, what's available up here? And how do you not? And like, it's hard, because the loudest voices online nowadays are either the ones that have had a fantastic experience or the worst experience.
Yes.
And
There's
usually
not a whole lot of
the
middle ground.
worst.
Yeah.
Well, for Alaska, it could go either way, right? Like if
Yeah.
you stay inside and suffer all winter, it's probably a terrible place to live. But if you go outside and you're out in the sun and you're doing things outside.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about like Alaskans in general, particularly here in Anchorage, we're very open to adapting. Think about going back to Jenna Wright's and ADC's last podcast or 2 podcasts ago, depending on when you publish this, on Choose Anchorage. Like, we want to know, what can we do to make Anchorage better for veterans, active duty military, and their family members.
Yeah.
We just need to know.
Yeah.
I heard a story of some military members went down to UAA's esports lounge and wanted to host a tournament there, but they didn't have money. And that would have been an easy, like, come talk to us, or there's tons of nonprofits that would have hosted that tournament for them.
Oh, man. Or like, how many local businesses love supporting the military?
Exactly.
Right? Like, I mean, dude, I could probably easily do a Rolodex on my phone and would have the money in an hour.
Exactly. Exactly. But those military members just didn't know. And so having
they also don't like to ask.
That is also true.
It's also a group that doesn't like to ask for help.
Yes.
Well,
and the resources, there's so much noise for resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That it's overwhelming, I think. And so people don't really know what all they have. And that's kind of the fight.
And it's a blessing and a curse up here with how many nonprofits we have. And, because blessing that so many people are so focused on helping our community. That's a wonderful thing. It can be a curse, because then we all end up trying to do the same things compared to collaborating. And that's one thing that us in the veteran space have definitely really seen, is like, how do we collaborate better?
Yeah.
How do we not step on each other's toes, go for multiple funding, that type of thing, and truly put what our mission is the veteran and their family first. There's a group of us that feel very passionate about trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
We haven't quite hacked it yet, so if you have ideas out there.
There's a podcast coming out that we're currently editing right now with Henning.
Yeah.
And they talked about the exact same thing, but on the homeless side.
Yeah.
Right? There's a massive amount of nonprofits. Some of them do the exact same thing.
Nobody's talking.
Nobody's talking. There's no like interconnection, because they're all fighting for the same funds. They don't want to lose their funding. And then just who's really contributing and who's just there.
Yeah.
Right. So it was an interesting conversation. So I look forward to that. That one's probably going to make a little bit of noise, but you know what? I'm like, there has to be a conversation on things, right? Like, you can't just not have a conversation, because people are going to be butthurt.
Well, and it's hard because you have to get people and really organizations to put their ego aside.
You're there to help people.
Yeah.
It seems to be the same echo, right?
Yeah.
Just from industry to industry. And like, for example, like J-Bear, right? That's our local post or whatever we're calling it now, right? It's our joint base. That's local to us. They have great programs for people that are getting out of the military, right? But they're not connected with local businesses, right? And local businesses are looking for labor.
Yep.
Right. And so it's like, how do you bridge that gap, right? And hopefully we can have some of those conversations in the near future.
Well, you are a perfect tee up. Thank you. I didn't even prep him for this, but on June 2nd, we're doing a Make It Monday at the Chamber about what tools are out there for for employers of veterans. So things like SkillBridge, that we've talked about before.
Yeah, I know. I keep applying for the SkillBridge thing, and then it's got a specific window to apply, and I keep missing it because I'm just, I just get busy, and I'm like, dang, next one. Yeah. Next one's not for like 2-3 months. And
just make one of your young agents do it, But at least each time you get it, you can get the questions figured out ahead of time.
Yes, it's true.
And we can talk about that since that's my side hustle.
Love it.
But yeah.
One of many.
Yeah, one of many. 80.
You got to keep yourself busy,
I feel like I need like a jingle or something for when my ADHD is firing,
That's okay.
All my friends know him, and you guys know him as Good Idea Fairies. And I call them gifts. Good Idea Fairies to slay. Whether you slay it as in you crush it. And you
That's like the same as like intrusive thoughts, right?
Yeah. But because I don't have much of a filter, I usually voice them. I'm like, what about this? Right. But I'm also not, I don't tie my ego around it.
Some are more sticky than others, right?
Yeah. And most of my friends are like, actually that one, and I'm like, yes, I got one.
Just got to throw it against the wall and see what sticks.
Exactly. Yeah. Spaghetti. But like when coordinating and putting egos aside, like how many people host Memorial Day barbecues or Veterans Day barbecues or 4th of July events? Right. And why are we not just picking one to go to? Or we just all pool and we rent out to the ground floor at the Denina and do it there. Yeah. And then everyone gets supported. Compared to just having to hop around town, that type of thing.
Yeah. And it'd be cool if there was more of like you said, like a large, like multiple organizations coming together to do what they're supposedly trying to do, right?
Exactly.
Military, whatever, expo, and kind of in one spot.
And like it'd be cool Memorial Day. This is a good idea, Ferry, to do because just thinking about doing the ground floor at the Denina. You don't want to do that for Memorial Day necessarily, because you want to be outside, right? Well, hopefully in Alaska, depends on the year.
It can still be rainy.
That's fair. Or snowy. But, maybe park strip or something like that, but it'd be cool if that happens,
Right, because then we can maybe, utilize some of these inactive spaces and put people there. And
exactly. Well, and like a couple of us have tossed around the idea of like doing a veteran resource center. That has its own problems because then you're managing a building, that type of thing. And that adds overhead compared to just being an online presence. But how do we, but the discussions are happening at least in a couple circles of how do we really support veterans effectively?
Yeah.
Like putting all ideas are valid, but let's discuss it and put egos aside and really like focus on how can we help.
Well, what's interesting is when you go into the military, you get some kind of sponsor, right? So you either have someone that's directly over you that tells you where to go, what to wear, and what to do, like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then on the way out, there's kind of that, but there's no like continuity of like counseling.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, how do we bridge that gap where you instead of just talking at them and sending them out of the door, maybe we talk to them, triage kind of where they are in life, and then recommend someone that can then advise them through that process.
Yeah.
Like, why isn't that a thing?
Yeah. There's
like school counselor.
I went through fantastic idea, Billy. And I went to a conference through the Association of Defense Communities, and I want to say Hartford, Virginia. Hartford County on the East Coast. I think it's Virginia. I could be wholly wrong, but it's an East Coast state, which there's only a few of them. But they did a 12-week course for veterans leaving the military. And part of that was getting a sponsor, and I was lucky enough that my boyfriend at the time, now husband, recommended I went to the Chamber of Young Professional group.
Yeah.
As I was leaving the military. And I met my now work husband, Justin Mills, and he's been a really great mentor for me as I got out and struggled with, even though I knew I was going to get out, there's a huge cultural shift as
Massive.
you leave.
Yeah.
And you know, then there's those that don't even know they're getting out, is particularly now with all the rifts going on. And so how do you deal with that? And how do you deal with the fact that, like, on the military side of things, I was super fuzzy and like feelsy and like I small talked a lot. And now on this side of the fence, I'm not. I'm like, per the civilian community, I'm very mission oriented, down to the point, that type of stuff. So how do you deal with that identity shift? So like small things we're doing here in Anchorage, like we're trying to do networking sessions for veterans through the Legion and then also through the Chamber. And, you know, the Choose Anchorage initiative is probably going to get involved with that too, or hopefully, you know.
I'm hoping it passes, you know.
Yeah.
Be cool.
Yeah, well, that's a Project Anchorage. There's two different ones.
Sorry. Yes, there's...
Yeah.
There's so many Anchorage things.
I know, right?
That's good, right?
Yeah.
Little momentum.
No, Project Anchorage, Choose Anchorage, both are awesome.
Yes.
Both through AEDC.
Yes.
So.
Project Anchorage came from the Choose Anchorage of like, how do we actually make Choose Anchorage a thing?
Yes.
And like Jesse Lake and what he's doing with Alaska Warrior Partnership out in Wasilla, he does these, he calls it the Band of Brothers, and it's
I've seen that.
Yeah, it's a monthly discussion of like anyone veteran related, of like resources or companies can come and chat, and they each time a case comes up and they just brainstorm it. How do we fix this? You know? And so it's a tactical level, and it's really great. And how do we replicate that here in Anchorage?
You could create a board just like that, right?
Yeah.
With interested entities,
right?
And then put together a resource list, and then have them sit in front of the committee and be like, "Hey, this is me." They review the file, right? And then they go through it, and exactly. They're like, "Hey, you know, if based on your goals and kind of where you're at, you know, maybe these are some resources that make." Yeah. You know, I'm going to make some introductions. You're going to get a group chat. Yeah. Or whatever, you know. Like that kind of thing. I don't see why that's not.
Exactly. And I think everything, you know, we've talked about is very doable. It's just, it's talking about the most precious commodity ever, which is time.
Yep. Implementation's always a tough thing too.
Yes.
You know,
and
it's a hang up for a lot of people. And
when those that are initially hyper passionate about it, need to pass it on, how do you make sure it lives past them? So, I mean, granted, that can come down the line, succession planning, you know, but there's also things like we have 4-Acre Group, which is supposed to be the coordinator of all things nonprofits here. So how do we utilize them? Right. You know, and so it's really just kind of the other hard thing is that a lot of us that are passionate about it are veterans ourselves. So we came up here. We're not from Alaska.
Right.
And so learning the Alaska landscape is, you know, there's a curve. I would say now, I was actually thinking about this morning, I've been here 9 years now, of which 6 of them have been out of the military. And I'm just now starting to feel like I got my feet a little bit on the ground and knowing where to go and what to do, that type of thing. Not driving without GPS unless it's some esoteric thing on the hillside, you know. Obviously, residential addresses you're gonna put into.
Well, of course.
Yeah. But being able to go by landmarks, that type of thing. Yeah. So, just how do we help that curve, you know?
So, besides the financial planning, you do what else?
So I do VetNex, which is a side hustle, which is a consulting agency that will help companies get involved with SkillBridge. So I'll sit down with them and work through their applications and help them basically speak a military, so that they can get it approved through
right.
And SkillBridge, by the way, for those that don't know, is a really cool program that the DoD has that I hope we keep. Where a military member, once they identify that they want to leave the military, starting at 6 months out from their end date, they can go work for a company that has, on the other side, been approved to be part of this program, and work for that company for 6 months learning these skills, that type of thing. So for using you guys, for example, they come and they would be an agent for you and they could build and sell houses and build their portfolio and network and everything.
Right.
So hopefully it's a seamless transition upon, take the uniform off one day and start the next.
Yeah.
They still get paid by the military and they still get their benefits through the military during those 6 months period. So there is a little bit of they can't get commissions per se off their,
right.
So how do you build it up? So you could do things like a signing bonus. When they leave the military and they officially sign with you, you could do a signing bonus. There's various ways you could affect it.
Cool.
But yeah, it's growing up here, and it's a great way to because military members change within their, I think it's first 5 years of service. I don't want to say it's an official stat, but I want to say 2-3 times they'll change their jobs, and if they don't know what they want to do. And so, and also those first 5 years after military are significant suicide risk.
Yeah.
And so how the military looked at how do we affect that positively and reduce that risk, and employment is one of the biggest contributors, because a lot of people
purpose,
money.
Yeah.
Just stability, right?
Yeah,
I feel like if you're busy,
it's a good word, stability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
idle hands, something like that.
You get the stress of family too, of you were potentially the breadwinner for the family.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and looking for benefit. Now you're lost with benefits, and then on top of that, you have what we talked about before, the whole stress of the cultural shift of leaving the military.
Yeah, massive cultural shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a disappointment phase.
Freedom. Oh.
Well, and then you get to work or wherever and you're like, oh, yeah, I forgot about this.
Yeah.
Well, I just, at the surface level, the military is a very well-oiled machine, right?
Yeah.
Ish,
it
right?
Depends on where I think it depends on where you work.
Yeah, there's a lot of discipline. There's a ton of structure.
Yeah.
What your job is.
Mm-hmm.
You know what, you have to be doing. You know what you shouldn't be doing, right? You know what the consequences are if you do the things you shouldn't be doing, right? Once you're outside of that wall, man, it's a lot of gray.
Yeah.
There is not. It's not black and white. It's not you do this, you answer to this guy. It's I can kind of get away with that now. I can.
Yeah.
You have a lot more flexibility and leniency and a lot more your own decision making, and then just realize you don't have Big Daddy DOD breathing down your neck for every single decision.
Right.
Yeah.
So
well, and just simple things of you're an NCO and you have an airman or a soldier that fails a PT test, you're at fault. Whereas on the civilian side, my boss could give, I work for my uncle, so my uncle does care. But generally speaking, most bosses don't care what happens on your outside of your job.
Right.
As long as you show up and you're able to do your work, they don't care.
Yeah.
And so when you're used to, particularly if you're entering at 18 and you're used to having that structure and that oversight, and it's great to have the freedom, but it's also terrifying. How do you actually adult now? And there's stuff that the military just takes care of that you don't have to think about.
Yeah, it's a little delayed.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you read your explanation of benefits when you put in a health claim?
Right.
Health insurance claim, and how do you realize when they say that you're denied? How do you know, is this worth fighting or not?
Yeah.
And then how do you fight it? And these are things that if it were civilian, I could go to my sergeant and they would help me out. Whereas, your boss may or may not help you out with that. I would hope that here in Anchorage, our bosses are nice enough to do that, and they care enough about our people, But that's not the world all the time. So,
right.
Well, I know Billy's just thinking over there. I can see it in his face.
Oh, yeah, I can see it too.
I was I just see this. You can hear the silence, but you can see this thought process, this movement going through.
Yeah,
I'm all right, Billy's got something to that, but he's chewing on it still.
Well, it's interesting because, like I said, it's the same conversations.
Yeah. And so how do we really change that for the positive? And just what can we do today that will set up future success?
Right.
And the hard part too, I think, is we're so afraid of failure nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even just on an individual side, but even on a government side, on a corporation side. Like, some of these things may fail.
Well, it's because everything is so transparent now, right?
Yeah.
Like your failure becomes this gigantic media, social media thing, right?
Frenzy,
and then like nobody wants to be that person. Right?
Yeah.
That's just like you're famous for the wrong reasons.
Well, it's a mindset shift too, because if you're failing at stuff, that means you're trying things, right? And it's eventually you're gonna you have to fail a few times to win. I think
100%. Yeah, 100%.
So it's like you can't be afraid of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't follow you. It doesn't define who you are. Like, it's just a thing that you did.
And it's hard because we're such a fast society nowadays. Yes. And a lot of these, I mean, how many times did was it Steve Jobs or Bill Gates that did the computer before Bill Gates before the computer actually worked? How many iterations in his garage, and he just had this vision and knew that he was on the way, but it took years.
Yep.
It's wild that they were pre-selling stuff though.
Look at that. Yeah, look at Amazon.
To look back at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also brilliant, But but it took time, and he didn't give up on it. And we are so quick to automatically say it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I
mean, look at Bezos, right?
Yeah.
Like how he started Amazon, selling books out of his garage.
Yes.
That was a smart idea.
In the 90s.
Yeah.
Like, dude, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize that it's been around that long.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about it when it first was a thing, so maybe we
just...
Yeah.
I
know, just aged yourself.
I ran into a friend of mine at Costco yesterday, and I had my property manager, John, with me. And he was like, I've known Justin a long time. And I'm like, man, I've known this guy for 35 years. And that was not from birth.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, shit. He's like, dude, you're old. I'm like, God damn you, dude. Man.
Yeah. Just my realization that I've been up here for 10 years. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, that's a lot of my life.
Yeah.
That's quick.
Yeah.
That's by quick.
And like how many we're on our second iteration, all of us you are on a couple iterations of your career now.
Yeah. I feel like I'm on my fourth life.
Yeah.
And it's like cats, dude.
But each time, how long did it take you to gain success, and then also realize it's not for you, and then move on to something else.
I try to level up each time.
Right. I feel like
you're bound to crash and burn at some point, but that's okay.
Try to do it.
Push it all back into a pile and figure it out.
I also think that as you go through life, you tend to grow, right? And then you have this ambition and this dream. Like for me, like firefighting, right? Like that was my goal since I was a teenager.
Same.
And so, got on with AFD, did a whole decade with AFD, right? And then I got into real estate and realized but there was a passion for real estate before I ever left, and I'm like, oh man, I really enjoy this and I'm really good at this, And so but that growth through adulting and just life is what made that transition. If you would have asked me when I was 17 that this is where I'd be now, I've been like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude?
Exactly.
That's funny because I'm having these conversations, with kids, right?
Yeah.
Like, you should start thinking about this stuff, right? Like nobody told me the things I'm telling you, or even some of my younger clients, right? But he's right about that.
Yeah, and I do that constantly. I was doing a mentoring event a year ago, and I was on stage, and I asked, it was a group of high schoolers and their parents, and I was like, okay, of the parents out here, who has the same job that they had out of high school right now? And there was one or two that raised their hand.
Yeah, but the majority of them know.
Bless their heart.
Exactly. And, and it's one of those things of same for me. In 9th grade, I found out about the Air Force Academy, said I was going to go there. I was going to be an intel officer, and I did it. Yep. And I became an intel officer, and I loved it. I still love it. But to succeed in the military, I'd have to shave a little bit of part of myself off of me. And I've realized my audacity I would have to shave off because I would have to like toe the line a little bit. I'm not great at that. And
I feel like most
entrepreneurs,
yeah, right, like business people,
yeah,
don't fit into that box.
No,
right? They're wanting to push the boundaries, right?
Exactly.
Like, man, how dare you tell me what to do?
Yeah. Well, what about this way?
Yeah.
What about this?
Yeah.
Why don't we do it this way? And so. And the reason I wanted to stay military was I had that deep passion for my brethren and sisters, and service members in arms, and I realized, thankfully, I can do just as much good on the outside as I can on the inside, and I'm much happier doing it, and realizing that my audacity is my superpower. And don't get me wrong, there's negatives to it too, but like leaning into that. How do I lean into that and make it?
Yeah.
Help the community. Oh, Billy's got something good. I see it.
It's interesting. Like
you could tell because he always, you can see him. He's like pausing.
Yeah. My uncle will do this. Let me hold on to that thought.
Well, it's just interesting because like as you grow, your priorities change.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And so like, for example, for me, like when I got into real estate, and the reason I do it now are not the same reasons. It just kind of evolves, as you learn your craft or whatever, and you find your passion for your niche. But as I think we all have this grand idea of things, like when he was a teenager about wanting to be a fireman, and it's like the coolest thing, it's like dangerous.
Yeah.
It's like that makes it cool, right?
I did it for the suspenders.
Well, I'm thinking, we're having these conversations, and I'm thinking about times when I was like sitting on the range on like the 50 cal, and I'm like, but it's raining and we're miserable and cold. Yeah. But then, like how unmiserable is that? It's like, you only had that one job, and it was to shoot that whole flat of ammunition.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like riding a jet ski, dude.
Yeah.
You just
no matter
can't think of anything else. Yeah. So I don't know. I think perspective is the big thing, right? Because as you get older, like we talked about, what time goes by fast, and as you get older, it goes by faster and faster because your scope of that time.
Exactly.
But I think as we kind of navigate through our journey, we find different things that are more important to us, and our priorities change.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So it's just an evolution process. It's not even really. It's trial and error, and that's where the growth in the real life is. It builds character. You got to have the downs for the ups, and it all kind of levels out.
I told you it was good. I know. I told you it was going to be good.
Just throwing out life nuggets, man. You got to charge for this, Billy.
I know, right?
One day.
Billy's business wisdom.
Well, man, it's kind of what we're doing, right? With like our teams and our clients. Like, I'm not an expert at all things, but I know a guy. Like, let's have a conversation and get you to the right place.
And that's the cool thing about Anchorage and Alaska in general is we're still relationship based.
Yeah, very much so.
It's not as transactional as the lower 48 has become.
Yeah, true.
And the lower 48ers will probably get mad at me for saying that, but from what I just hear of my fellow veterans that are getting out, it's still very much, I know a guy up here.
Yeah.
Well, it's a small community. I mean, it's a big state, but it's a small community.
Yeah, and you have a little bit of that island mentality too, because we're essentially an island. So it's pretty awesome.
It's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Also sucks.
Yeah. You talk about that $5,000 out of pocket, add the Anchorage premium to it,
Yeah. It's just like, everything takes a while to get here. We're a decade behind.
We have crazy weather.
Yeah. Or like let's just talk about buying cars up here. Used cars are going to cost as much as a new car.
That's wild.
And what happens to those used cars if they don't get sold? Like, where do we put all our trash? That type of thing.
And if you need factory maintenance, let's hope that
exactly.
It's one game in town, you'd have to drive to another state.
Yeah.
Have some kind of whatever,
and so how do you, when you're moving up here, you're not expecting that. How do you deal with that? You can think about it like from it's easy to think about from like a utility standpoint, because that's easy to find on the web. But when you start thinking about really the second, third, fourth order effects, that's where finding your community ahead of time is really helpful.
That's what we're trying to do. Actually, our new website's being developed right now. We have a whole PCSing page.
That's awesome.
Dedicated to just active duty military.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Specific information, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And what where do you want to live based on what you want for your
what do you like to see? What do you like to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you like to walk to work, or do you want to be downtown and be around bars and restaurants? Do you want to be near a trail? Like, do you want to live in a botanical garden? I know we can hook that up.
Do you want to drive from Goodwood every day?
Yeah, I mean, there's some ins and outs. Like, what are your goals? Like, what do you like? What are your habits? What does your family look like? Where do you want to work? Where do you want to recreate? All that stuff comes into play.
Yeah, and like we haven't even really touched on, and I don't know how much more time we have, but we haven't even touched on like spouses.
Yeah.
And family members and things like, there's simple things like reciprocal licensing. So you're licensed to go practice down in Virginia. I'll use Virginia again because I'm just picking on that state today. But NUPCS up here, like, you have to pass the test right now, I think. Whereas how do we get Alaska at the state level to approve those licenses so you're able, we're able to get the spouse into the workforce as quick as possible.
So like a reciprocity kind of thing.
Yeah. And then also like if they're leaving, that makes them that much more likely to stay here. If the spouse is happy and successful, why would they leave?
Right.
And that beyond just trying to capture the workforce from a workforce development perspective, that's just what we should be doing.
Yeah.
Right. And there's going to be some that are going to leave no matter what, and that's fine. Like go to wherever makes you happy, and there's some that are going to stay no matter what. But what about those that don't know? I was lucky and I found a job.
Yeah.
But what may be more willing to look here compared to where I came from, which is Minnesota, is that
Minnesota.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Oh, you betcha.
Oh, if you get me talking to some Minnesotans, and it really comes out. But my boyfriend was here, and now husband. Love you, babe. See, gave him a shout out. But that made it, but he was willing to follow me if that's why he was stayed boyfriend when I was.
But opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Kept you here.
Yeah, and and when I just happened to find, I was at Merrill Lynch and I was like, well, fuck it, let's try it. Worst case scenario, I'm right back where I am right now, but I at least have a little bit more financial knowledge.
Right.
Best case scenario, I found a career of my dreams, and while Merrill Lynch, great company, wasn't the right company for me to work for, and found Ameriprise, and here I am thriving. So I'm a lucky case. How do we change that for everyone?
Well, I think it's highlighting, how you got here and you being willing to have conversations in rooms like 100%. This. That whole follow me thing is something that somewhat lost in the disconnect between service to civilian, and I think we should bring that with us.
Yeah, and hopefully we can find a way to capitalize on that superpower of our veterans.
So we ask every guest, if you've listened to our podcast, I'm going to ask. She's already nodding her head. 5 nuggets or just points of, of like if people are looking to make a career move, they want to be entrepreneurs, launch a business, what are 5 of the top things you've learned?
Fast forward through all of this, and I probably don't. No, I'm just kidding. One, every good idea is not necessarily a good idea. And on the flip side of that, every advice given to you is not necessarily the right advice you should follow.
Okay. That's super honest.
Yeah.
We have not had that one yet.
Yeah.
I like it.
So much advice that has been given to me because I haven't been shy about asking.
Yeah.
And I get where it comes from, and I don't dislike them giving it to me, but it's not effective for my life. I mean, just think about it from a simple point of like parenting. How many parenting tips are there out there?
Yeah.
And whether they're effective or not. Billy and I can have a whole conversation about that.
He's like,
there's so much missing.
Yeah.
Like if you get on like WebMD or whatever and you're really scared yourself.
Oh, yeah. I know. Everybody's going to die with cancer.
Oh, they have a cold or cancer. You know.
What color's her poop? We got to pull out the poop palette.
All right.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
Dose. So there's one. Dose. Don't be afraid of change from your original plan.
I like that.
That's a good one.
All of us here have made it pivots. Pivot.
Large pivots.
Yeah. Hopefully Ross was not helping us with that. That's a nugget for us. our generation and older. And then let me think here. I had a bunch of them on the way over. I was like, I know he's going to ask me this.
She's listened several times. 3.
Yeah, 3.
Just shoot off the hip.
I know. SBDC, the Small Business Development Corporation.
Yeah. I did not know about that. That is a good resource.
That's a great resource.
I recently used them for a project. They do an excellent job, so shout out to this.
Yes.
Yeah, I've used them frequently, and they're a good resource. And then what's great is the counselors that they have. If they don't know, they know someone who knows.
Yeah,
so similar type of thing.
That's awesome.
4. Make sure you have a good community around you that supports growth, because it's that whole thing of you're the sum of, what is it, like 6 people that you're spending.
Tribe is everything. Even if you mess something up, you got another opportunity.
Yep. And 5 is your greatest weakness is sometimes your greatest strength.
Ooh, I agree with that. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, so reframing how you look at that, and if it's your greatest strength, how do you lean into that in your business?
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
finding a way to monetize that.
I think a lot of people don't realize that could potentially be your superpower.
Just being yourself, isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Just being
right?
true to yourself and having an honest.
Because what appears to be a possible weakness to someone could be a superpower to someone else. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you just gotta find your niche.
Yeah, and it's super difficult because often those superpowers can be polarizing.
This is very true.
And people are either going to love it, absolutely love it, or they're going to hate it.
Yeah. And that's why you should go full send, because then you figure out fast who your friends are, and then that you can start benefiting from that community.
Exactly.
Calculated full send.
Yeah.
Let's
go.
I'm not talking about just getting on a snow machine and taking that jump.
I mean, are you wearing a helmet? Like, how do you get information?
See, calculated, Billy.
Yeah.
Calculated.
I often tell my husband.
Good advice here.
Yeah, I often tell my husband, I was like, just tell me where to go. I'm gonna go. Just tell me where to go. Give me my bumpers.
Yeah.
Left and right. I can go this far either way.
I know. You two are funny.
Then,
He's like very
Well, he's an accountant. Yeah.
He's a very accountant mind for sure.
Yeah.
You're definitely the squirrel.
Yeah. No way. No, I probably drive him bonkers sometimes, but I love him. He's great. He keeps me grounded.
And the last thing.
Yeah.
Is where can people find you?
The best way is you can either find me online on the website, Ameriprise. Just Google Laura Dean Ameriprise, and there's a little click on there, like contact me, that type of thing. You could email me at laura.dean@ampf.com, or I'm probably at some networking event all around the city. I was going to say world, but it's a little too ambitious right now.
Anchorage, YPG, Chamber, Legion.
Chamber stuff. Yeah, I'm getting back into Legion, so that'll be...
well, I know you're on a time crunch because I know
okay.
you got Munchkin, man. We have parenting.
It's that time of day.
It is that time of day.
How do you fit parenting into your life?
Yeah,
that's been my challenge.
I know. And schedules, man.
Yeah, well, and how do you lean into your parenthood and so bringing my kid to granted he's a 3-year-old right now, so the tantrums are a little too much to handle it. Taking him to professional events, but when he was a little guy, I could do that.
Yeah, a little easier.
Yeah, once he gets to Levi's age, Well,
I've taken River on a couple showings. She's 4 for 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
and deal. So it's good luck.
Yeah.
Kids are like that, dude. Well, cool. Well, first, thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely.
Loved having you on.
Yeah.
And, I think we got a lot to talk about after the show about, veteran outreach, making sure that people are taking.
Yeah. And I really respect you guys and how you guys put, good thought towards how do we actually do this and make this a benefit for our community.
Yeah.
So
we have this conversation all the time.
I know.
We always talk about how to outreach and suicide awareness, veteran outreach. Just making sure military members aren't getting screwed over by some of these companies, and it's because we see it often, and I'm like, man.
Well, with information being as available it is now, there's no excuse not to know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right? It's just now, are we willing to have those conversations and do the work?
And that's why I told Billy, I was like, this year, I was like, we're creating a PCS channel. I was like, we have a studio.
Yeah.
We need to just put good content out here.
Yeah.
So that way people have an actual legit place to get reliable, trustworthy information for people that are not there to take your money.
Yeah. Full send.
So, anyways.
Right.
Thank you for coming on the show, and we'll see everybody on the next one.
It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.